What's going on, everybody, and welcome back to Mastercrafted. It is Lane as Phil, as always, and today we have two of the best CSM players in Colorado. We got Mike Pestilence and Trey Burnett, who's just won 2 GTs recently with CSM. We got some of the best experts on the subject, and they're here to talk with you all today. How you guys doing?
I'm doing great, Lane. Having a fun time.
Absolutely.
I got new stuff to play with. I'm always excited for new detachment.
Exactly. CSM already really fun to play. Anything new, anything that kind of gets our creative juices flowing, hell yeah, let's have fun with that.
Yeah. Phil, as always, you're here with us, dude. You mean you have to have an opinion on this, right? You're going to be playing into some CSM, I'm sure, at some point. What are your thoughts as a non-CSM player looking at this new detachment?
Well, when I look at new detachments, the one thing I always like seeing is like, hey, what tools are we giving our opponent? What is GW trying to do? What are they pushing? Like they took time to write a detachment, and we are not getting the Grotmas of old where everyone gets a new detachment. I would expect that we'll probably get half the amount of detachments at a max that we got last year. So I always like seeing new things because I think rates the meta. It causes some different things to happen. And I think for a lot of players to keep playing in the hobby, they want to see that their army is supported. And I know CSM have highs and lows, right? Like they go out and win LGT with Liam VSL, who's an incredible player, right? But then they struggle on the other side. And this, I would say, just from first glance, this is a high skill cap army, not necessarily because of like a lot of the intricacies, but I would say there are so many rules. This is a dense rule detachment. So I would say if you're going to play this, you need the tokens out there. You need something to remind yourself. I would strongly suggest anyone who wants to run this detachment, which I think does have some great tools in it, you need to have ways to remind yourself of some of these rules because there is a lot in here. Like
For
this,
sure.
we'll go over the detachment rule first, just so everyone understands. It's all based on battle shocks, and this is another time that GW has tried to use battle shocks as an impactful mechanic in the game for detachment. So it's Nightmare Hunt. It's based on the Night Lords. I really like Night Lords. Like, the army as a whole is very, very interesting, but basically in the battle shock step of your opponent's command phase, if a unit is below its starting strength and within 12, no visibility required of one Heretic Astartes unit from your army, they must take a battle shock, subtracting 1 from that result. And unfortunately, the one caveat to this is enemy units affected by this detachment rule do not need to take any other battle shock tests in the same phase. That works in the opposite of the Tyrannid rule for the Hive Aura that forces everyone to take battle shocks, and then you take a subsequent one the following turn. So right off the bat, it is a little different. It specifically states you don't take another battle shock. And then there's 3 sub rules for this as well. Every time your Heretic Astartes unit from your army makes an attack that targets a unit that is below half strength, add 1 to the hit roll. If someone targets a Heretic Astartes unit from your army and they are battle shocked, they are -1 to hit you. And then each time a Heretic Astartes model from your army makes an attack that targets a battle shocked unit, add 1 to the wound roll. That is 4 army rules, each with a separate caveat in the same detachment rule. So Mike, start us off. What were your first thoughts when you saw this detachment rule?
All right, guys. So I'm going to step back for a sec. People are initially very hesitant to believe in rules based on battle shock, and I get that. I'm going to tell you all right now a bit of a hot take. I think the battle shock part is fine about making people take battle shock below starting strength in a big aura and a -1. That part's actually pretty good. People are going to read that and dismiss it entirely, but battle shock, when it happens in mass, makes a real impact on the game. And I kind of learned that myself playing Plague Legion. Philly brought up a very important distinction. There's a Nurgle detachment that basically forces battle shock tests in each player's command phase. I agree with you that the Night Lords one is worse because it only makes you take 1 test. That's an important distinction. But at the same time, 12-inch aura, that's huge. Making you take it at -1, that's huge. There's a lot of ways to do chip damage, especially you have a lot of like Kingfire granite pistols with lethal hits. You can use grenade strats. You'll often find a lot of enemy units below starting strength. And forcing those battle shocks, they're going to fail about half the time. We can get the math around that a little bit later, but forcing mass battle shocks, that part's pretty good. And the fact you get on command, always on, +1 to wound versus battle shocked units, that will legit add up, especially because there are a few ways to force battle shocks in your own turn. And this is a rule that, again, it's not going to have the same impact every time. It's a little unpredictable. But while you don't know exactly when you're going to get value in each game, you will get some value in every game. Trae, what are your thoughts? You agree? I'm going to kick over to you, buddy.
It wouldn't be a CSM detachment without its caveats. That's all I'll say.
Real talk right there.
I think this is a huge upgrade. Basically, this is just Dread Talons 2.0. They've taken that detachment, and I feel like they've actually made it playable. The big thing, and we'll get into it later, there's a bunch of ways to subtract from an opponent's battleshock test within CSM and other allies. A big thing that kind of sucks is the below half strength. I think all of the battleshock abilities are a lot more accessible, weirdly enough, comparatively to anything below half. Because, for example, let's look at our meta as a whole. Vitrix Guard. Everybody loves them. I have to kill 4 Vitrix Guard to get one of those units below half strength, and then I get +1 to hit. So that, honestly, I like every part of this detachment rule besides the below half with +1 to hit, because it will come up occasionally, but it just feels like the most reach out of all of them to get value out of it.
100%, but with 4 sections, there's still a pretty good amount of value, even if that specific one doesn't trigger. I'm going to give this probably a 6 out of 10 on the power scale detachment rolls. Below average, but far from trash. This is a pretty solid detachment roll.
I would 100% agree. It's like, cool. Even with caveats, you have 4 effective rules. One is going to happen somewhere.
Exactly. Yeah, 6 out of 10, solid. This detachment will be carried a lot by the enhancements and stratagems, but you do get a lot of value straight up from the roll.
Speaking of which, we'll cruise through those enhancements. The first is a Chaos Lord can give his units the stealth ability, and if they're within range of an objective marker, they get 18-inch loan up. Very solid. Can't complain about that one at all. The next is for a Jump Pack Lord only. You can attach them and put his whole unit into strategic reserves. And you can, it's at the end of the opponent's fight phase, you can remove them and put them back into strategic reserves, I should say, to clarify. And then we have the next one for a Heretic Astartes model only. It is Force of Battleshock at -1 at the start of the fight phase for each enemy unit within engagement range. Very solid there for an army that's wanting to get that +1 to wound turned online. Very nice for sure. And then lastly, a Jump Pack Lord can attach to Warp Talons, and he gains Scout 6.
For that, the Terragil Parasite, I just like to clarify with that it's only engagement range of the bearer. Mm-hmm. So any lead units, you will have to tag with your character. So it's like you can't stretch out a whole Accursed Cultist unit and be like, I'm going to battle shock 4 units. Sadly, it's only the bearer, but you can put that on like a Demon Prince with wings, anything with a big base to attempt to battle shock multiple targets. I think that's probably the best spot for that. But I think that's going to be more of an enhancement where it's like, oh, I have 10 points left over. Let's throw it on this thing.
Yeah, so absolutely. Let's talk some combos here. I'm going to start bottom up here with a Sorrow Sent Vulture. First of all of these names are actually really cool. I'm going to be honest. I mean, Sorrow Sent Vulture, like, I don't even know what the heck that means, but I'm into it. The Jump Lord attaching to Warp Talons and scouting 6 inches. This unit is both insanely busted, absolutely out of control busted, but also not busted. Because on the one hand, for those that are not familiar, Warp Talons have their role. End of the fight phase, if you A, got a kill, B, not engaged, your unit can jump up at the end of the turn, or end of the fight phase or whatever. So basically you can get free kills. You come and you kill something, you jump up for free. They don't get to do return damage. This is insane with a Chaos Lord, because one, the unit just straight up hits harder now. It has access to, you're going to give him a Power Fist, and he's going to have 5 2-damage attacks, in addition to the 40 Warp Talon attacks. That unit, now that has access to some multi-damage weapons, is going to be much more reliable at killing a lot of targets. The Chaos Lord, also giving them a free stratagem every battle round, is absolutely huge, because the big combo you want to do with a Warp Talon unit is you come in, kill something, jump up at the end of your turn, then your opponent's turn, you rapid ingress in, and you kind of get this Warp Talon cycle that dominates games. Being able to do that for free with a Chaos Lord every battle round, that's 4 or 5 CP saved over the course of a game, really helps your CP economy. In addition, the Chaos Lord gives the unit the grenade stratagem, so he has access to grenade keywords. That unit can grenades to kind of help get units below half strength, for example, to turn on +1 to hit if they're kind of hovering around half health. That unit's super powerful. The reason I say it's not out of control is the fact that you spend almost 400 points for this unit. It's more expensive than a Big Knight, So yeah, it's going to dominate areas of the battlefield. It's going to dominate games. It's almost 400 points for a bunch of 1 damage attacks with some 2 damage attacks mixed in there. It better be freaking dominant at that points cost for 10 marine bodies.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do y'all think this unit's out of control, too strong, a staple? What do y'all think?
So I think this is a staple of the list. You need to auto take the Chaos Lord with the enhancement and 10 Warp Talons.
Mm-hmm.
I think the most interesting part of this is the turn 1 question it asks your opponents. You deploy this on the board every single time.
Mm-hmm.
Let me explain why. So you basically just don't take Infiltrate. I'm a huge proprietor. Try to punish me. Jameson, come at me. Infiltrate your whole army. Try to move block me. But basically, I put this up on the edge, and I'm like, okay, I scout 6. Are you going to put your infiltrators outside of 9 to prevent that? Okay, that's fine. I'll scout behind the wall, scout behind a rune. If I get turn 1, I get your infiltrators for free with this unit, because I just move out, charge it, I get picked up. Great, and then I can free stratagem rapid ingress. Another great thing is, okay, you don't want to put your infiltrators out, you want to heroic me to try to keep me from doing that, or you're like, I don't have anything to block you. So I scout forward, I move 12, you put Cypher and a Rhino near this. You move Cypher, get out 3, move 6, advance. Cypher turn 1 can vect that heroic, and you still pick up whatever you want. Sure, you have Cypher out in the open, but it's like, if they put out something real juicy that you want to pick up, it's still just you. It gives CSM a lot of turn 1 play to where you can pick up free resources for very little clap.
Yeah, 100%. The one kind of downside to this unit is the Chaos Lord. His datasheet's actually pretty awful. Like, it's just 5 Power Fist attacks. He can't take a Thunder Hammer. He can't get the +1 damage like a normal Chaos Lord. So he doesn't hit very hard. The main benefit he gives is he gives the unit he leads 6-inch Pylon and Consolidate. And that half of that's really wasted on Warp Talons, because you're going to want to kill something, and you're not going to want to use the 6-inch Consolidate very often to then go tag something else, because that defeats the whole point. You have to be not engaged with another enemy unit to jump back up at the end of the turn with a Warp Talon roll. There's a little bit of a backwards combo there, but 6-inch Pylon's super good. We'll make sure you can always get all of the Warp Talons in. And 6-inch Consolidate is also useful late game. For example, maybe turn 4 or 5, you don't want to jump up anymore. You go tag an enemy unit, get more people onto a point to contest, maybe tie up multiple units. Powerful unit, very expensive, a little bit of a nombo there with the Consolidate roll, but still useful for late game.
Yeah, I think the easiest way to really frame it is it's basically when Shadow Legion dropped, everybody's like, oh, the Fade Thirster. It's the same combo, but this can run through walls, right? This is so much easier to bring in stage. Sure, it's 400 points, and you're like, oh man, it's just picking up. If it picks up a unit of trash every single round with no punishment, like, it's worth 400 points every single time.
Yeah, 100%.
And it won't be hurting your CP economy because you rack it for free.
I think, Lane, you hit it on the head right there. Super important. It is an expensive unit, but if every time you put it out to kill something, you're never trading it in return, like, you need to be cognizant. The one thing that's going to catch you up if you're running this, like Mike and Trae are saying, is you just got to be cognizant of the heroic intervention, right? Make sure you're not putting yourself in a position where a significant asset can heroic into you, and then your Warp Talon unit cannot kill it in return, right? Like, you can't let Bulgrin heroic intervene into it. You can't let Wolfguard Terminators heroic intervene to it, because they won't kill those things, and then it's going to be stuck, right? You have to be very cognizant of those things. But if you send it out after scouts and you pick up the scouts and you go back into reserve, that's a valuable trade. You've picked up an asset for nothing, where the majority of the times you have to trade something for those things.
Yes. And I will say there's a little bit of synergy building. In that late game, you're often going to have a lot of your opponent's units battle shocked, which means often there might be one battle shocked unit next to a non-battle shocked unit. So you just charge the non-battle shocked unit, and then the battle shocked unit is not eligible to use heroic intervention. There's a little bit of synergy and kind of late game destruction building there. In terms of the other enhancements, I think there's some real juice here. Grey Veil Hex, whatever, the one that basically gives your unit 18-inch lone op and stealth, or always stealth, 18-inch lone op while on the objective from the Chaos Lord. I'm struggling to see how to use this. It's not bad on like a Lord with 5 Legionaries. Like, you flip a point with the Lord and Legios, and then you're just on the point, harder to interact with. That's not bad. I think this is also kind of interesting with a unit of Terminators, if you want to try a Terminator brick with a Lord, because the unit shoots pretty hard with a full, pretty hard. It shoots decently, clears chaff, does some chip damage. And Terminator's the kind of unit that requires a huge commitment from your opponent. So if you have 10 Terminators with this on an objective, your opponent has to move real resources within 18, and you can kind of counter hit that with the rest of your army. So this works pretty well on either a durable brick or something like a trading unit, like some Lord and Legios that want to be on a point and say, hey, send something real to deal with me. You can't just snipe me across court with a Predator or a Vindicator or something. It's interesting. Anyone see any really fun combos with the Grey Veil Hex?
I'm of the opinion that I hate that enhancement because it's like Terminators, I think, are another. I think if Warp Talons didn't exist, I think Terminators would be the second best thing because they have rerolls innately themselves. You can give attach a sorcerer, you get an additional AP. He rerolls advances and charges, which will be important later on with the stratagems. And then he gives out an additional AP, so it's a big unit that does a lot of damage that does not need detachments to make it deal that damage. But I just feel like I've played with Nemesis Claws a lot. It's 5 legionary bodies with stealth. They still die. And this is a Chaos Lord, so unless you're spending a ton of points on a Terminator brick to hold your objective, I don't see this enhancement ever making any of my lists. It's just one of those things that's like, okay, these are some cool, unique abilities, but then, it's only 18-inch lone op, so a lot of things with the short sight lines that are on a lot of these boards, someone's already going to mainly be within 18 usually. And then stealth, just CSM, it goes Eldar, dies, and then CSM comes right after that. We die just as fast. It's like GSC players, you can revive your stuff. Get out of here. I will stand on that pillar that it goes Eldar, Andrew Kari, and then us for what dies the quickest.
100%. I think there's a little bit of interesting play here on a solo Jump Lord. As a resource, probably, I don't know exactly what the enhancement costs, but he's 80. You buy the enhancement, let's say it's in the 10 to 20 range, probably somewhere there. Unit that walks onto objective, requires 18-inch lone op, stealth, so it's not super trivial. I think that's interesting. Maybe fight with some skirmishers. I don't think that's bad, but I agree with you. This is definitely one of those ones you're not going to put in every list. It's a definite maybe in one of the weaker of the bunch. One I think that will be in every list is warp-fueled thrusters. The one for a Jump Lord lets you basically do uppy downy, playing for a leave at the end of your opponent's turn, or fight phase, but effectively the same distinction. And do note that it says into strategic reserves. You're going to want, because the Jump Lord has deep strike, as does Raptors he attaches to, that means you can come down the next turn anywhere 9 inches away. I think this is pretty snazzy. I think a cool piece of tech here with this is you just have a solo Jump Lord with this as like a little scoring thing, jumps around. And do note, unlike some uppy downies, I believe this is every turn of the game it can happen. It's not like once per game. So you can literally just every turn, end of your opponent's turn, it's kind of like a Calidus. You say, hey, I'm going to pick this up. Let me draw my secondaries. If I don't get behind enemy lines or something, I can just put him right back down in my backfield. Keep him safe. Try again, uppy downy the next turn. He's a small 40mm base by himself. Is that how y'all would use this, or would you attach him to some Raptors?
Oh, 100%. We have Calidus at home.
Exactly.
That's what this model is.
Exactly.
And then if you haven't used the free stratagem on your Warp Talon unit, he comes in, uses a stratagem if you want. But basically this helps because I think the biggest strength of this detachment is you want to make it to turns 4 and 5. That's where this really goes on. You want to get rid of trash. You want all the big stuff to get hit. And you're just basically out attritioning your opponent in the late game because they're taking a bunch of battle shocks. They're kind of disjointed. They can't screen you. So it's like, okay, I have Warp Talons come in over here to hit your weak flank. And then, oh, you can't screen me out? Perfect. I get 5 points on deploy teleport homers in your backfield. Now you have to remove this model or I'm just going to keep scoring points.
Absolutely. Run this guy solo. The issue is you can attach him to Raptors, but the Raptor war gear options are pretty pitiful. For example, if you could attach him to 10 Raptors that all had Meltas or all had Plasmas, I think that unit would be a fun combo to uppy downy and shoot. But Raptors are basically a bunch of bolt pistols and chainswords with either 2 or 4 specials, depending on how many you bring, and that unit evaporates immediately after you trade it. So you want to just have a little solo, jump up around and score. A final enhancement I want to talk about is the Terror Gillette Parasite. Again, I think you all made a very important distinction. Start of the fight phase, enemies engaged with that specific model have to take a battleshock test at -1. Do note that this combos very well with Raptors that innately have a roll. Start of the fight phase, a unit engaged with them has to take a battleshock test, and it's also at -1. So you'll be taking a battleshock test at -2 and taking 2 separate battleshock tests at the start of the fight phase if you have a jump lord with 5 raptors attached. That's the point where people are almost always going to fail at least one of those battleshock tests, and that'll turn off a lot of other defensive strats, and it'll turn off your +1 to wound boost. Do you all think that's a viable combo, the jump lord with
I
raptors
do
with
not
this?
think about that because
I
I was
think-
looking at
Happy to
her.
talk about it.
Yeah. I think it's one of the most important ones actually. Because Trey and I were talking before the show is like, man, I would have loved to see a guaranteed battle shock for one of the strats. And when we get to that, we'll kind of
Man,
talk
I
about some of the
wish.
combos like 2 CP, target within 12, or even target within engagement range. That unit is battle shocks, guaranteed 2 CP. I think if we look at a lot of the 2 CP strats in the game, I think that does fall in line with like I would say reasonably balanced for what 2 CP strats are right now. And we're talking about an ability that only really triggers in this detachment. And I think it'd be really, really effective because it's pretty much 2 CP for battle shock and +1 to wound, which is awesome. Right? Like that is awesome. But that is as close as you're going to get. And I genuinely believe like you need to have that combo in whatever way you put it. But Heretic Astartes model with this strat, with the capabilities to double battle shock or have additional modifiers for battle shock. That way in the fight phase, you can turn off like fight on death. That way you can turn off AOC. That way you can turn off any of these defensive strats or even just and interrupt, right? Like if I could turn
100%.
off those things, like it just means that you're more survivable. And as Mike and you and Trey have said, like you are not the most durable army by any means. So you need to make sure that when you go into combat, it hits, and that is a way to do it. But it's a risk,
100%.
right? Because they could just pass both battle shocks, and then you're like, oh well, my whole plan is now out the window.
Well, the little trick, Phil, whenever I have a key battle shock I have my opponent need to take, I'll put my hand on their shoulder, I'll look them in the eyes, and I'll tell them just how sad I'm going to be if they pass the battle shock test. And I kind of emotionally guilt them into failing that. No one is strong enough emotionally to pass 2 battle shock tests while I'm begging them to fail one. So that's the trick. Use a little emotional manipulation. Works every time.
And then they usually respond with, "Who are you? Why are you in my house? What's going on?"
Like when they wake up, I'm over their bed. Can you take a battle shock test? They're like, I've already failed the battle shock test. I'm still calling the cops. Yeah. Cool. Let's talk stratagems, guys.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Phil.
Well, just for those newer players that are seeing this for the first time, just a reminder, during those phases, your opponent cannot use the inspired leadership. They cannot auto pass any of these battle shocks.
Great
so just
point.
I know for our more experienced players, that is not something that like you would ever confuse, but for our newer players, it is significant. You cannot auto pass any of those that are outside the battle shock step, which is
great point.
significant.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think the combo you guys talked about is going to be such a staple, especially because like as we read through these stratagems, keep in mind a lot of these are contingent on you attacking something that is either battle shocked or below half strength. And a lot of the times you're going to need them to be battle shocked because if they're below half strength, you're not going to need them as much. So the first one, Talon sunk deep in your shooting or your fight phase, and one Heretic Astartes infantry unit from your army that has not been selected to shoot or fight till the end of the phase. Each model in that unit, when they make an attack against a battle shocked or below half strength unit, they can improve their AP by 1. So that's why it's going to be so important. When you finally have to play against Victrix Guard and you're like, man, I really need these attacks to have some extra AP, right? You're going to want to have battle shocked them beforehand.
Yeah, for sure. Do note that this stratagem, I think, is actually pretty good because across the game, there's a few versions of plus AP stratagems, like EC, I think Peerless Blazeman has one, and that's 2 CP in fight phase only. So on the one hand, we have the very specific restriction of only battle shocked or below half strength, but on the other hand, it's only 1 CP, and it works in 2 different important phases. I think this is actually pretty good, like a solid 8 out of 10 stratagem. Just a good one to have access to.
I think that this stratagem actually works well with Noise Marines because they're already ignore cover. If something's battle shocked, you spend a CP and you're ripping through with AP 3 and AP 2 ignores cover guns. Then in addition, so the greatest thing about Noise Marines, you already take them in CSM, but whenever they shoot something, until the end of your next phase, they are -1 to leadership. Next shooting phase, they're -1 to leadership and battle shock tests, which is huge because this can stack with everything. For example, the enhancement we were talking about earlier, you can double battle shock someone, and then if that thing was shot by noise marines, it's at 2 battle shocks at -3.
100%. That's huge. I just want to note, again, it's Heretic Astartes infantry only, which does mean there's actually a funny combo where people often want to shoot noise marines out of a rhino to use the firing deck roll to shoot the 2 blast masters. Do note that wouldn't work. Again, we understand, just for any newer players, just be aware of that keyword there. And that kind of ties into the next combo, which is, or next stratagem, which is Prey on the Weak. Very similar. Shoot in or fight phase. When you're attacking a battle shocked or below half strength unit with a Heretic Astartes infantry, you get full hit rerolls. How do you all feel about this?
I personally believe that a lot of these strats are great. Like full rerolls to hit is fantastic. We're talking about units with lethals, with sustain. It is shooting or fight phase, which is huge, right? Like I'm so glad it's not tied to just one of them. I'm so glad it's in both. It means that you have a lot more flexibility in this strat. But I think a lot of these strats, if I was like a CSM player, I would have loved to see AP1 base, and then if the unit is battle shocked or below half strength, it goes to AP2. And then same with this one. If it's reroll ones to hit base, and then if they're battle shocked or below half strength, you can reroll the hit roll. Because once again, we're tying a lot of things to battle shock, and I'm sure there's going to be, I know for a fact, there's going to be some real bad feelings where like your opponent just won't fail a battle shock. Like especially on the crucial times, crucial units when you need to go into something and you're not as effective as you want to be because you were relying on that battle shock. And it gets even tougher. So you need to find a lot of redundancy in that to trigger these strats because I personally don't like the fact that it's tied so directly to the battle shock. I would like a little bit of help when even the battle shock doesn't happen. But
I hear you.
I can gripe as much as I want. But this strat is still good.
Yeah, and don't forget, this is still CSM, where you have lethal or sustained on demand, and if you can get full access to hit rerolls, that's crazy. Like, this is a great strat. Like, when you get to late game and you're trying to bring down some of those tough targets, because I think that is one of the harder things for CSM to do, like, this is going to be a bread and butter with lethal hits.
I don't know about
CP2,
you guys,
that's awesome.
But I crash out when my 6s don't do anything. I'll play other armies, and I'm like, what do you mean? I just rolled 3 6s and nothing's happening? Like, get out of here. I'm not playing Space Marines anymore. But
Trey, that's the difference between us. I never roll 6s, so I never have any emotional attachment to them. I'd love to roll a 6 one time. Just one time in my life. I want to see a 6 on a dice.
Mike, we saw what you did to Frank with that Overwatch, and that was like 7 out of 12 6s. Okay,
listen, Frank did it to himself. You know, he talked a lot of trash, and the dice gods really love punishing that.
Yeah, Frank always talks a lot of trash. It's like, true. Is the sky blue? Like, yeah, Frank showed up to that game. I can already tell you he talked trash, and then at turn 5, he's complained 6 times about a rule that's not even
100%. He goes in the Discord afterwards to keep complaining. But we all love Frank. Awesome guy to play. Hope we get a rematch, maybe on the Mastercraft stream sometime. Hope you all check out that game. But yeah, next strat we got Sadistic Display. Continuing the awesome names, by the way. Trey, talk to us about this. Talk to us about the stratagem, what it does, and why you love it so much.
Yeah. So the reason I love it so much is it does nothing. So, a fight phase just after a unit from your army destroys an enemy unit. Okay, so I've already attacked. I've already done everything. Each enemy unit within 6 inches and visible. So if you're behind a wall, you're just fine. You just heard a bunch of murderous screams. Your guardsmen got killed. And you're chilling. And then also excluding monsters and vehicles, which monsters and vehicles are the things you want to be battle shocked the most in this list. You must take a battle shock test. No -1s, no nothing. And it's only within 6 inches, so usually in a game of 40k, everything is more than 6 inches apart. And then to top this all off, okay, you fail the battle shock test. You're something that I wasn't really in engagement with. And then you take a battle shock. Let's say you failed it. Great, you're battle shocked. Guess what happens next? Usually, it's your turn. And you're unbattle shocked.
Yeah, I will say there's the niche scenario where you are trying to kill one thing and pile into the next, and maybe it is not battle shocked, and maybe you want to prevent them from AOCing, right? So you're trying to kill the first thing with your first unit, for some reason you need to battle shock the second one so your second pile in and consolidate can actually go in and be as effective as you're looking for. But other than that, I 100% agree that this is not remotely useful.
Okay, so a couple niche scenarios, because Lane, you're spot on. Trey, you're spot on. Both of you all smart guys. I expected that. But there's a few very niche scenarios. Okay, one, you have something like Storm Hostile Objective. Okay, you come on the point. You don't have enough OC to take the point. You kill something, and then you look at that point of that unit, make them take a battle shock test. They become OC0 in your turn. Then you now they have OC0 on that objective. You score a Storm Hostile Objective. That's a cute one. The other one is maybe the threat of your opponent. Because often one of the things is in a melee mirror or like a matchup with a lot of melee going on, right? The threat of interrupt is so huge. Well, here you have a way to threaten that. They can't rely on always having access to interrupt because maybe they won't be able to interrupt sometime, So it kind of affects how aggressively they can play because you have one of the things that 40k is always projecting threat. You can't really charge 2 units because there's always a threat they can interrupt. Here, you've got the threat of maybe you won't be able to interrupt. That does affect their game plan. That puts gears in their head going of, okay, what if I lose multiple units I can't interrupt? Having access to the threat of this, I think, is actually pretty decent. There's niche scoring scenarios because often maybe like endgame, for example, right? Bottom of turn 5. They're not going to have a command phased on battle shock. You just score at end of turn. This gives you another chance to maybe, a Hail Mary to kind of score 5 more points on primary, depending on the mission. Maybe more, depending on the mission. Again, this is one of those ones, yeah, I agree with you. This is not great. This is maybe a D tier stratagem, but this will come up at times. This is one, as far as bottom of the barrel stratagem to have to fill out a detachment, this isn't bad. This isn't completely useless, just mostly useless. That's all. I've done my pitch for it. Do you all agree?
Yeah, that's completely fair. I think they could have done some really interesting things with this strat because this definitely feels like the last one. Like they were just like we've already given it everything else. We want to do something else like battle shock related, but once again, this could have been the guaranteed battle shock strat. I believe this could have been the 2 CP auto battle shock. I don't even care if you tie it to the beginning of the fight phase, like beginning of the fight phase within 12 inches. Or beginning of the fight phase within engagement range, this unit is auto battle shocked. That could have been this. But it's not. So yeah,
this would have been
it is what it is. I can't believe I'm vouching for CSM. I can't believe I'm saying that CSM needs this thing, but I think that would have made this honestly, you give it that one thing. I think it moves this detachment from what I would say is probably like a C tier to an S tier. Genuinely, because I think that alone needs everything else kicks.
+1 to wound against you. Huzzah.
Yeah. And or even just after a unit in the shooting phase is destroyed, right? Give you the chance to proc this earlier and point at something and affect the units around what you killed, right? To where it could make shooting builds better. It could put things, at that point before you even do your charges. I don't know. I think that would have been much better than what it was.
I hear y'all. Cool. Let's move on to happier places. Next stratagem, 1 CP, Malicious Surge. Good bread and butter strat. Just 1 CP, Heretic Astartes Infantry. You can advance and charge. Awesome.
Great.
Love
Fantastic.
it. Awesome. Great to have access to. A couple little details here on the stratagem. 1, Heretic Astartes Infantry only. Trey was bringing up a really good point pregame in that CSM have very limited access to advance and charge at anything besides infantry. This kind of continues that pattern. You can't use it on something like a Mauler Fiend that would love this. Only infantry. But that's fine. Our infantry are pretty dang good. Do also note it's in the charge phase. Or Trey, let me finish quickly if you don't mind.
Yeah, no worries.
Just in the charge phase, no restrictions. So a great example of how you can use this is, say you've got multiple attempts to charge an enemy unit. You can have 1 unit charge, see that they failed, and then you're cool. Now I'm going to spend the 1 CP to give this other unit that advanced access to advance and charge. You don't have to prepay in the movement phase or the command phase. So it's actually, kind of useful. I like that little detail. Sorry, go ahead, Trey.
I would add another detail to add. So there's plus sides to being in the charge phase and there's downsides. I'd say the downside to counterpoint you is Vectoras. Because it's in the charge phase, I have to spend it in your Vectora. Because if it's the movement phase, I'm like, okay, I spend it before I get anywhere close to you, and then I'm within, I can already advance and charge. Another thing that I'd like to point out about this detachment, I don't think it will be the best, but it is definitely something you can pivot to, is not a single area in here does it say excluding damned units. And GW, ever since Accursed Cultist came out at the beginning, they have spammed excluding damned in every single detachment besides Chaos Cults. I don't think this takes over Chaos Cults for Accursed Cultists. However, this is a very interesting look because I haven't really looked too much into it, but you can take just Accursed Cultists without Dark Communes. I think it's mostly bad. However, you get Scout 6 on them already, and then they get access to literally every single rule. And they can advance charge, they can fall back and charge. They can get +1 to wound if you're battle shocked. It's also Accursed Cultist. If it has a Dark Commune, I'm super hard to remove. I Blood Surge into you, and then I tag a ton of stuff. I'm in the middle of your army, so anything below starting is taking a battle shock. I think that's something important to note, and that is a build. I may experiment with it at some point. I just feel like the warp talons of this detachment kind of pigeonholes it to how you have to build, because it's like, okay, 400 points of my list are in this, so that any other big bricks are a little hard to justify because you're already putting so much into this warp talon brick. However, that is a very interesting and nice way to go with this detachment, because it's like there's no restrictions. Full rerolls to hit on ACDC.
Great point.
You can get fall back and charge, which is huge for Accursed Cultists. There's really no other spot besides Pack Bound and like detachments we don't talk about that you get fall back and charge.
Absolutely.
Which I kind of skipped ahead.
Well, let's go right into it, buddy. Do you want to go in the next stratagem and just talk about it?
So Relentless Terror, your movement phase just after Heretic Astartes unit from your army falls back. Target that Heretic Astartes unit, and then until the end of the turn, your unit is eligible to shoot and declare a charge in a turn in which it fell back. This is the stratagem that made me kind of look at Terminators for this. Terminators are one of the few things that like will actually live. They do cost an arm and a leg, but you can live, take advantage of all these buffs from everything getting battle shocked, and then even if you get stuck in, I fall back, I shoot, I reroll hits, I charge, attack, reroll hits. I think a 10-man brick with a Sorcerer Lord could be fantastic in this detachment. I think it will be, if you do so, you will have to have such a fine hand, and it will be such high skill cap because you have to balance 10 Terminators and 10 Warp Talons, and both units will have to kill over half of your opponent's army.
Yeah.
I mean, that'll be so easy when
go ahead, Lane.
It'll be so easy when you have your Chaos Lord with the loan up, so that way they're just really big.
Oh, there we go. They're destroyed now.
No, you put the sorcerer on this.
I'm just messing
and I will die by that because your whole army will get +1 AP whenever it targets something. And then let's just think about it for a second. +1 AP if you're battle shocked. I'm +1 to wound, rerolling hits. That's gonna be like, it's 4 bolter shots per dude. Let's say there's 10 of them. That's 40 bolter shots, re-rolling hits, +1 AP, +1 to wound. I can make it +2 if you're battle shocked. So, weirdly enough, in this detachment, I think that this detachment is better for Terminators than Fellhammer. I think this is the best Terminator detachment, honestly.
I think Trae is a little lost in the sauce, but I love the enthusiasm. Terminators are super cool. I want to live in the world Trae is living in. Full of butterflies and roses and Terminators, being great here. If we're going to talk Terminators quickly, I still think Renegade Raiders is by far and away the best one for Terminators, and the Fellhammer is really good for the 1 brick with the Bastion plate. But I also agree, Trae logic makes total sense. Awesome synergies here for Terminators. I do want to note, this is one place where this is the detachment is a strict upgrade on the old Dread Talons detachment, which has had 1 CP fallback and charge. This now is 1 CP fallback, shoot and charge. So a unit exactly Trae's talking about that has dual phase threats like Terminators or Obliterators, I think are the other big one. If they get tagged, they can't shoot anymore, so they can fall back, shoot, and still take advantage of those 2 damage fists in melee. Terminators and a Blitz love this. I think Possessed also love this because they're very easy to tie up, but they're durable. Being able to fall back and go charge something else, be around the board, stay mobile. Just again, this is a great stratagem to have in your toolbox. The final one is a lot more situational. It's called Horrific Incursion, another banger name. And it's a weird one. So it's just in your movement phase. 1 Heretic Astartes unit that was set up from strat reserves. It basically looks at an enemy unit within 12 inches and makes them take a battleshock test at -1, excluding monsters and vehicles. Do note that this is one of the few strats that doesn't have an infantry restriction. Something like, for example, a freaking Lord of Skulls can come in out of strat reserves, point at something within 12, and make them take a battleshock test to -1, which is very funny and very fitting because those things are terrifying and massive. I think this strat's really cool, kind of that combo we talked about earlier with the Jump Lord, with warp-fueled thrusters, jumping up and down every turn, using a stratagem for free. Jump Lord comes up, comes down within 12 of an enemy unit, invisible, maybe peek a tight little angle past a corner, comes down, 0 CP because he's a Chaos Lord, makes them take a battleshock test. They failed around half the time, and then it turns on all of your detachment rolls. And the cool thing is because it's in the movement phase, you will have that information. Like maybe line up 2 targets for one of your Noise Marine units. Hey, if they fail the battleshock test, I'm going to shoot this unit. And if they don't fail the horrific incursion battleshock test, I'll shoot something else. This is a great little toolbox stratagem. I think it's actually this is solid. Solid, C+, B-. How do you all feel about it?
I like it. I think it's very good. Yes, we're relying on battle shocks again, but at least it gives you the inherent -1. You don't have to jump through a bunch of hoops to do it, and you already have the tools in this detachment with the Jump Lord, which I think is the best way to run this. I would agree. To actually be effective here, you just gotta be very, very safe with him, right? Like you want this. You don't need to go. You don't need to go deep in your opponent's lines to like go after certain units unless it's a game-winning move. More likely, I would like this is how you pump up the effectiveness of your trading pieces, like how your warp talons or maybe just your brick of legionnaires goes into something, and they are that much more effective because they're gonna, have maybe reroll all hits or +1 to wound or whatever the case is. Right, like this is solid, and it's 1 CP and pretty much free. You should really never be spending CP on this, unless you're in dire straits and you need to do something. This is what the Chaos Lord is there for.
Yeah, solid one to have in the toolbox.
Awesome. All right. Well, you guys prepared a list, so I think we'll just go ahead and start taking a look at that, see what sauce is truly cooked up, what combos you guys felt were the most important to have, and what made the final cut.
Yeah. So I will say, I feel like over the course of us discussing, I have felt more and more convinced that this detachment can actually do something weirdly
Let's
enough.
go. Let's go.
Like, I feel like my mind has changed because I think the biggest thing that changed was I was like, this stratagem's terrible. And then, was it Mike or Phil mentioned, they were like, you put this on a Raptors unit and it's double battle shocks because it does stack, both at -2. And if Noise Marine's shot, it's at -3 and it's not restricted. I sat there and I went, that makes 10 Raptors actually viable because then you're almost guaranteed to battle shock something. And then you get access to all your damage strats and you murder that thing. But to the list, Cypher, auto-include. If you don't have them in a CSM list, you're trolling. I'm not willing to discuss it. That's it. End of story.
Hey, Trey, I don't run Cypher, right? I haven't run him for a long time.
Okay, well then, as I said, it's... Mike, why?
I'll be honest, I get a bit lost in the sauce. I think Trey is completely correct. 99% of the time, unless you're running some weird detachment, have Cypher in there. I think he's almost an auto-include unless you're trying to do something fancy. And to be honest, my list would probably be better with him. I'm just probably overthinking it. So yeah, Cypher, auto-include, love that. Let's keep going.
Next is Fabius Bile. Later in the list, you'll see 10 chosen. But this is more my personal flavor. I can see depending on what we have because the army already has a lot of damage. However, Fabius adds something to the army of he always advances in charges. He always falls back in charges. So this because of Chosen.
Yeah, Fabius was a Chosen.
He can be so mobile within the enemy army, and usually Chosen will live a couple turns to get all the bonuses. It's also just really hard to remove with once a turn blank. Fabius gets back up on a 2-up. And this is my personal favorite unit in CSM. I take it in every single list. I think it's just so good utility-wise and has so many great use cases because Fabius brings Chosen up to Strength 6, which is a huge break point for anything big. With this +1 to wound going around, he could wound big things on 4s with the massive amount of attacks that Chosen have. So yeah. Fabius is usually an auto-include for me in the detachments that I play. But I think this is one of the things that is like my personal flavor that I like to add.
Yeah. Well, actually, I want to note here, Fabius, he makes his Chosen base Strength 6, I believe. because he adds +1 strength. And into a Big Knight, which is T11, that's an amazing breakpoint because now you're going to be strength 6, often +1 to wound, which means Fabius Bile, just the default basic chosen, can wound a Big Knight on a 4 in Nightmare Hunt, and that's not nothing. That's
No,
very cool when it
it's
lines up correctly.
Not nothing.
Cool.
Next are the characters. So there's no enhancement attached. If you notice at the top, 1945 to predict what the actual enhancements, this list could change according to points, but one of them will be equipped with the Warp Talon enhancement all the way. And then the other has warp field thrusters. So a single Chaos Lord that just uppy downies, I think it's a great utility piece in CSM because I usually run into, I love playing Veterans of the Long War. I'm a very slow list. So I have to play basically step by step, forcing you in a location. But this allows me to traverse the battlefield quickly, get secondaries when I need to, and basically make you screen out your backfield at all points in the game, or else I'm going to get value. And that's why I like this.
For sure.
Next, the mandatory 10 cultists to hold your backfield. It stickies your home objective.
Gotta have them.
And 50 points for 10 bottles that can string out and screen a ton. This is the same as Cypher, 10 cultists. You just have to have them. No reason not to. Great backfield objective holders.
Mm-hmm.
I'm only committing 50 points. And then they also sticky it. So if someone's deep striking and shooting you off, you still get that objective for a whole nother turn. Or if it's turn 3, your opponent's already all the way on the board, you advance them forward and they can either do an action or hold an objective while your important units go kill other stuff.
Yeah, and they can advance and charge here. So, I mean, that's just pure value on cultists.
Exactly.
Record, y'all, just for anyone listening, please do not make your game plan to advance and charge cultists. I'm begging you. I'm absolutely begging you. Don't do that. Cool.
So the Nemesis Claw, the reason I added them here is, okay, they're Night Lords models. Come on, guys. We got to maybe run them.
Gotta have it.
But they also add something interesting, which, dependent, I may remove them or not. However, they turn off stratagems if they are within engagement range of you. So just no strats. So this is very important when you look at the Warp Talons, because Warp Talons, they hate getting hit because they are paper. So if you're running into a matchup where they have fight on death stratagems, you need to hit something without losing the Warp Talons and they didn't get battle shocked, the Nemesis Claw just adds that extra layer of protection to where I send this in, you can advance and charge it to get it where you need it. And I think it's just a great use case piece because just the fact that I have this makes so many people think, and they just avoid the Rhino that it's in because they're just like, oh, no stratagems. I will say, everybody, it's excluding monsters and vehicles, but it's like, if the monster vehicle fights on death, it's knights, and it was going to kill me either way.
Well, I also think looking at the best armies now, I think you don't really worry too much about monsters and vehicles. I think we're kind of a very infantry-heavy meta between Ultramarines, especially Victrix heavy lists. Maybe Eldar being some of the best armies out there. So I think that restriction doesn't come up as often as you think. Really a premium unit, and Trae, I definitely agree with you. Worth at least considering in a Nightmare Hunt list for style points as much as roll power.
Exactly. Next, we have 3 units of Noise Marines, which I think this is the premier shooting piece of the detachment, because the way I kind of look at it is the Noise Marines have 2 stages in this detachment. The first of which is they sit in rhinos, they firing deck with lethal hits, and they just chip stuff. It's like, okay, I chip that, I'm in a rhino, like, you're going to take a battle shock, you're going to take a battle shock, right? And I'm protected in the rhino. The next thing, you hit me back, you shoot me back, you pop my rhino, I have to get out. And then now, my Noise Marines, when they shoot you, you're going to be -1 leadership and battle shock tests until my next shooting phase. So this is huge synergistically with the detachment, and also just one of the most efficient shooting pieces we have, because in a rhino, it has a whole extra life if you play it correctly. And then it also aids our detachment roll, and then with access to fall back and shoot, if someone charges your rhino and then tags it, you're like, okay, great, I'm going to spend a CP, I'll fall back from you, I'll shoot you, and then my army will attack people.
So, yeah, I just want to make sure people understand the fallback and shoot can't be used on the Rhino, but you can do really cool tricks where, say you've got multiple Noise Marine units that get tagged, you can do really cool transport tricks where one of the Noise Marine units, you spend the CP to fall back and shoot. The other one, you fall back into the Rhino, and then the Rhino shoots is not fallen back. So you can still fall back into Rhino and shoot out with firing deck. So you can effectively, fall back and shoot with several Noise Marine units in the same turn between Rhinos and Stratagems. So really flexible unit. Access to great flat 3 damage and shooting. Access to the AP combos. Trae was talking about earlier, where you stack the +1 AP on top of AP2 ignores cover Blastmasters, AP1 ignores cover Sonic Blasters. I think frankly, every Nightmare Hunt list, you start with 3 Noise Marines and then go from there.
Yep.
I think almost as much as the Warp Talons. Every Nightmare Hunt list, you start with 3 Noise Marines and the Warp Talon brick with the Chaos Lord, and then you write from there.
And Cypher and Cultists.
I'll talk to you after the show, Trae. But yeah, no, great. No,
we're gonna talk with these, Mike, if you don't put those in your list.
Sounds like it might be a stream game challenge at some point. I don't know, just saying. We'll see what happens.
Who knows?
Y'all better sub to Mastercrafted just in case. A little spice might be coming.
Little spice. After that, 3 units of MSU Raptors. So my thought process behind this is usually Legionaries will take this spot. However, the Rhinos are already full, and Raptors just synergize with the detachment. I charge something -1. You have to take a battle shock, which, they're going to move 12. And then they have 2 plasma pistols. For the war gear, I put 2 Meltas. You can put plasma guns, whatever you'd like. I think the Meltas will be the best for, killing something big, and then it's almost guaranteed to kill some infantry. And they move 12 inches. It's just a fantastic unit, and it has an aura within 6 inches of -1 leadership. That's where the -1 to the battle shock happens. However, after discussion, I think that I might go back through this list and change some stuff, because I think a 10-man Raptors unit would actually be fantastic. You attach a Chaos Lord to it with the enhancement to force a battle shock at -1. So then you're basically... I need to read the wording on that enhancement again real quick, because...
It would stack with the Raptors battle shock test and with their innate -1.
Yeah, because Terrifying Assault says at the start of the fight phase, each enemy unit within engagement range of 1 or more units with this ability must take a battle shock.
Well, so the thing I was reading, so the enhancement only subtracts 1 from the test the enhancement forces, so it would be 1 at -2, then 1 at -1.
Okay.
Yeah,
that makes sense.
That's just great. What I was trying.
Yeah,
it's
awesome,
still great. Don't get me wrong. I was just trying to make sure I was saying the right thing and not spreading misinformation.
Yeah.
But I think that with a Lord and 10 Raptors would actually be fantastic, because
great combo.
You charge, it's very likely they're going to be battle shocked, which leaves you access to +1 to wound, reroll hits, +1 AP. So your Raptors are going from chain swords to basically hitting like a chosen unit, and even harder than a chosen unit, usually. So that's kind of something I was thinking of changing there, but continue on with the list that we have here, which I think this is actually a very solid list that can put up numbers. 10 Warp Talons to go with the Lord, as we talked about before, and then finally 3 Chaos Rhinos.
Gotta love it.
To just transport everything. And basically the idea is to get your chosen out fairly early. You start one of the Noise Marines just out of a Rhino, kind of free floating, and then once the chosen are out and active, the Noise Marines replace them in that Rhino, and you have 3 Rhinos firing deck and 3 Noise Marines running.
So Trae, yeah, I was just messing with the points in my head. Again, depends on the exact point cost of the enhancements, but I think a really cool way to get the better combo in there, if you drop the 3rd Rhino and the Nemesis Claw unit, you can then get 5 more Raptors and the Lord probably with the enhancement for the battle shock test. And I think that's a pretty sweet combo.
That's literally exactly what I was thinking too. Because then you
do the math right now.
The Lord and then upgrade to 10
Sounds
Raptors.
Good. I don't think the points cost of all the enhancements are out yet. I think just the depending on which content creators. Right. But it's gonna be in the ballpark of that. You can always fiddle around with things. I love you've got the big Raptor hammer brick like you're talking about, and you've also got the 2 skirmishing units.
Yeah, like the big
That seems
Raptor
really fun.
hammer brick. You have Warp Talons, Raptor hammer brick, and Chosen to hit something. The only thing I'm worried about with that is it's a lot of damage one.
For sure.
So you could struggle into bigger targets. So I think it's more of a like, play it by ear and figure out what's going on. I think another interesting way to go about this detachment, my favorite, obliterators, because they have the once per game indirect. So basically you can sit there, figure out what's battleshock, then I'm like, okay, I indirect it with reroll hits.
Yeah, that's huge. Exactly, because the combination of hitting on a 4, because the maximum you can hit on indirect is a 4, but then you get sustained hits. So you effectively hit on a 3 as you reroll. People don't realize this, but if the indirect unit shoots, they're going to hit on 4s and sustain hits and full hit rerolls. That's mathematically equal to 100% conversion rate. So if you roll 7 shots on your blitz, on average you should get 7 hits when you use the full hit reroll stratagem. That's going to do some real damage, especially with that +1 to wound into a lot of different targets.
Exactly.
No, I think obliterators are a great combo here. Other avenues to explore, I think possessed are kind of cool, and ACDC too. Cursed Cultist, because any of those kind of big units that take up a lot of space and are very durable. Love a lot of the synergies here to hand off the battleshock auras to take advantage of the fallback and charge. I think possessed and ACDC are both premium units here.
I think this detachment, after talking about it, is there's going to be some sauce here, and
let's go.
You cannot look at this and immediately go, this is what works besides Warp Talons. It's like we said, everything that we mentioned that's not in the list is perfectly viable and fine. I think probably the one that might be the slightly biggest stretch might be obliterators, because it's a lot more situational, but they still have a ton of support in this detachment.
Oh yeah, at least one unit.
Even indirect to get something below starting, right? It's like, I'm going to indirect your big blob. I know I'm not going to kill it, but it's below starting. So on your turn, it's going to start taking battle shocks for the rest of the game, which is, I don't even have to wait to have a big indirect turn. And then with the +1 to wound with reroll hits.
Yeah. I think you maybe bring one unit. Because I think the one on the board, by definition, if you go first, you're never going to get off battleshock combos. I think you save it to deep strike in turn 2 or 3 once you see what is battleshock to start hunting that. I think the ideal usage, you bring one unit, you come in deep strike turn 2 or turn 3 or whatever, and you shoot something visible that's battleshocked, and then use the indirect maybe on the following turn to make up for the lack of mobility, because you have access to advance and charge. Shoot, I believe they waddle like little babies. I think they're 4-inch move. So yeah, you want to come down and shoot something directly that's battle shocked. Really take a freaking punch out of that, and then the next turn use the indirect to make up for the fact they're pretty slow.
I love it.
And then if they get tagged, fall back, shoot and charge. They're still loving life. Yeah, blitz are just synergy, for days here. I think
just taking the one unit, it fixes your problem of all damage 1, and then if you're just saving it for that battle shock target, it's like, okay, I'm strength 12, AP 3, damage 4. I'm gonna reroll all hits into you. I'm +1 to wound, so I'm gonna mainly wound you on 2s.
Even big knights on 2s, T11.
Yeah, big knights on 2s. So I just deep strike down, and I'm like, I'm going to take a chunk of flesh, and it's guaranteed good luck.
Yeah, I don't think you want to lean into like 2 or 3 units. That might be too much, but one unit just really fills a nice hole here. Let's talk about some other units I think are kind of really cool here. I think you do want to be very infantry heavy here, just given how much the stratagem power is tied into infantry. I think tanks are not bad. I think CSM, just the access to dark pacts, even with like very little synergy. I think things like predators, vindicators, are just totally fine. I think you want to bring maybe 1 or 2 predators just to cover angles. I think Trae, you had a version of the list you're experimenting maybe with a predator annihilator, which I think is actually pretty cool. Just threaten some las cannons downrange. Let them not deploy so aggressively. Because one of the big issues here is one of y'all made a really good point earlier, which is given a lot of your damage is tied to battleshock and below half strength, your turn 1 alpha strike will be really nothing. Turn 1, you don't really have any damage rolls on board. Which means you're really going to want to make sure you kind of disincentivize them from being too aggro turn 1. So I think a couple tanks just to make them deploy a little cagier has a lot of value there.
I will say, I do think, Trae, your list with those small adjustments and Oblitz especially, that sounds like a lock for teams, especially if Victrix Guard do not get toned down. I think that is something that could pin Victrix Guard, because one of the other things, right, if you know they're battle shocked, they no longer get blood surge.
Yeah,
like that's huge. They can't fight on death. They lose so many of their rules, and if they can't use strats,
all of you.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, can't AOC. That's so huge on 2 up save.
You can't AOC, and then also you're +1 to wound, so the -1 to wound doesn't matter. I wound you on 2s either way. and then I can stack AP as well, so I can be AP 4.
Yeah. No,
Those
it's a
oblets
spicy
would be
meatball, my friend.
disgusting. Flat 4 damage? Whew!
Yeah. So let's actually kind of talk about Nightmare Hunt's place in the meta, because I think Delaney brought up a really good point. Certain matchups it's a lot better than others. How are we feeling this kind of detachment ranks and power level, both within CSM and the game as a whole? I have some spicy takes, but I'm gonna let you boys cook first before I put a little too much spice in there.
My thoughts, Trey. You go first. You're the
Me
CSM
go
expert.
first. All right.
You're the
I've
changed
gone
man.
into
You now
guys
have
enough.
faith.
I am a
go,
changed
Trey.
man.
Come on.
I came in, I'll be honest, I came in here, I was like, C tier. Done. Like, it's C tier. It's like, it's above Dread Talents, it's above Deceptors. Like, it maybe has a little more play than Fellhammer, but that's kind of where I placed it. I think this detachment, you will get wrecked. If you do not know how to play CSM, if you do not know how to play the game, I think this has become the highest skill cap CSM detachment. And I think because of that, I believe that this is both B tier and A plus within CSM. And I think it is B tier in a sense of if you don't know what you're doing, you will get rolled. You will make one mistake and the whole game is over. But if you play your game right, you play it well, and you figure out all the tips and all the tricks with this, you can go far. And so it's like, I would, at best, I think it's up there with Renegade Raiders, Veterans of the Long War, and Creations of Bile. And I think at worst, it is along with Soulforged and Fellhammer, where it's...
He's literally listing off my favorite detachments and just
No.
wrecking them. Okay.
No,
So,
I'm
Trey,
so the
I
top...
actually agree with you.
Yeah.
I agree with you. I think this is, I'm going to do 2 hot takes back to back.
Okay.
One, this is the 8th best CSM detachment. Okay? Because let me list out the ones I think are clearly better.
Okay.
Renegade Raiders,
Yep.
Veterans of the Long War.
Yep.
What else is good? We were talking about this on Discord earlier. I can't remember the list. Soulforged, I think, is clearly better. Fellhammer, I think, is clearly better. I think Fellhammer is very good. I think Chaos Cults, 5th one, I think that's clearly better.
Oh, I forgot about Chaos.
Chaos Cults are kind of, they're still a little OP, just no one has the models and interest in running that army.
They're great.
What are some other classic CSM detachments? I'm going to take a quick look at the list. Pack-Bound Zealots. Pack-Bound Zealots, clearly better. And Creations of Bile, I think, clearly better. So at best, I think this is the 8th best CSM detachment. So that's the first hot take. 8th best CSM detachment. That sounds really bad on the surface, right? My second hot take, I think this detachment's pretty damn good. I think the 8th best CSM detachment is still a very good detachment. I think mid B tier is where I'd put this. Overall, in terms of the game's power level. And don't someone in the comments go in there and say CSM of like a 40% win rate, one near the bottom, they're a bad army. How can their 8th best detachment be good? CSM players, I love you. I love y'all. But we have a bit of a Space Marines issue where there's a lot of newer players, more casual players. Kind of the win rate, I don't think is ever a true reflection of CSM's power level. I think CSM are super good. 8th best CSM detachment, still a killer detachment. I mean, you could easily podium a GT with this. Not even a sweat if you're like a very talented player that puts in the reps, has a lot of CSM experience. If you're new, you might get rickety wrecked. I'll be real with you. I think Trey was spot on. This rewards CSM mastery and being able to focus on a lot of little game mechanics, like avoiding heroic interventions, spreading auras effectively, avoiding the counters to your units. This will reward mastery, but I think this is a solid B detachment. I would put it a little bit below Soulforged and Fellhammer, kind of in that lower CSM power level, but still a very good detachment. Phil and Lane, what do y'all think? I play CSM to my knowledge, but you do play a lot of other armies very well. How do you think this sits in both the CSM power level as the non-CSM players and the overall game's power level?
You want to go first, Lane?
Sure. I agree with basically everything you guys have said. It does seem very skill capped, right? Like this detachment has a lot of strengths in it, but applying them correctly without ever overcommitting and any of those hurdles that are going to be in your way that are going to trip you up and then eventually potentially lose you the game. This is riddled with hurdles, so being able to do that well is going to be a huge thing. I do think this is going to depending on where the balanced data slate puts us, I think this is a very good anti-melee detachment. Like you can really, you want to get in close. That's the best chance for you to spark a lot of these stratagems that you have, is forcing these battle shocks, turning off their stratagems, is happens at the fight phase. So having armies that are also kind of doing that and just beating them at their own game, I think is going to be one of the best matchups. And that's why I brought up teams. I think this is going to be a great option for a lot of teams as something to potentially bring, depending on what stays strong in the meta after this data slate. I think it's solid. I don't think it blows me away. I think it's just going to be a good CSM detachment.
I will stand by my C tier. I think this is interesting, but it's only C tier. I think this immediately goes to A if we had a way to guarantee battle shock. If one of these strats was a guaranteed battle shock, this immediately goes to an A tier for me. I'm perfectly comfortable with that. Now, in saying that, I think battle shock is one of those things that, GW has constantly tried to push as a viable mechanic that armies can use to affect their opponents. This detachment feels like if it's going to win, it's going to have the highest differential, right? I think it has the capabilities to deny your opponent's primary scoring incredibly well. I think it has the capabilities to push differentials incredibly well. And as Lane was saying in teams, I think you have a higher chance of getting higher differentials with this detachment, I feel, than you do into others, because there will be a swing turn where your opponent fails 3 battle shocks in a row. You've turned on every army for this, for this detachment, and it just goes bonkers because it's going to get +1 to wound everywhere. It'll get +1 to hit everywhere. Then you're going to, you're going to strat up for reroll hits in the shooting phase and the fight phase, right? Or you're going to get +1 AP in the shooting phase and the fight phase, right? You're just going to go off because you're going to get off all of these strats that are actually super impactful if you could just do one thing, which is either get your opponent below half strength or get them to fail a battle shock. If you can do those things, you can have a go turn, right? And you will know in your opponent's command phase when they fail all these battle shocks and you have 3 or 4 critical units that are battle shocked, you're like, this is it. My next turn is my go turn. I'm going to run them down. I'm going to deny primary because they just failed these battle shocks. So maybe I denied primary off that without even actually having to interact with my opponent. I was just within 12 inches. So like you have the capabilities to push differentials with this if you can get that turn, but you have to be incredibly patient. Like we had a coaching game the other night and I was talking to a player and they were like, this just doesn't feel right. Like, I don't know. I feel like I should be doing things. And I think it's the one thing that players struggle with is understanding how to be patient and wait for the opportunity. I think being patient in this detachment is very obvious. You're waiting for certain units to fail battle shock, or you're trying to force battle shock in certain areas with the, Raptor unit with the Chaos Lord, and you're just like waiting for these critical battle shocks to trigger, and you're like, this is it. This is my turn. I'm going after him.
So, Phil, that was actually really interesting. Really appreciate your perspective. As like a high-level player that doesn't play a CSM and how you think about them in teams, I would actually play it very differently in teams. I think this is a defender army along the lines of Veterans of the Long War over a hammer differential army like Creations of Bile. And I think the big difference and the big reason for that is kind of leaning into what you said, but interpreting it differently. All right, you say it's very inconsistent game to game and turn to turn. That's a strength as a defender because you put it out there. It's very hard to guarantee a good score into a Battleshock shenanigan army. I've taken Plague Legion to teams, which is the other kind of premier Battleshock army in the game, and that was how I use that. Hey, you can kick my ass on terms of material on the battlefield. It's still really tough for you to run up a primary differential and a secondary differential when you have to deal with so much Battleshock BS. I think Nightmare Hunt plays in the exact same role. Like, this is the kind of army, you think you've got a big material edge, like you're going to kick Nightmare Hunt's ass. Cool. Good for you. How are you going to guarantee a 20 when you're going to be taking a bunch of Battleshocks and have a hard time scoring primary and have a hard time scoring secondaries? For that role, I think this is actually a defender that's very hard to push differential into. And if it gets, the right attackers can push some points back on them.
I think it can be played both ways, honestly. Like, the justification makes sense, but the difference for me between Plague Legion and this is Nightmare Hunt is fast. Like, you have so much jump pack units. You have so many ways to just like out OC whether you pass the battle shock or not. And the original list that Trae put together, that had 16, I think, units, activatable units, and that's without the blitz or anything like that. And I think overall that could just be a problem for some armies to deal with. They just can't activate that many times to deal with all of these assets that are out on the board. So I think it's probably list dependent. I think you're right. Like, if you could play it as you could, you could build a list that is very defender heavy. Like, hey, I have so many activations, I have so many 12-inch auras. You're not going to be able to control these objectives without taking battle shocks. Are you going to put 2 units on there to try to guarantee The fact that like you want this objective, great. Now you've exposed 2 units for my blitz, for my like JP or my raptors or whatever the case is. Like I now can go out and touch these units, and you've exposed 2 for 1 for free.
Sure. No, I mean, that makes total sense. It is definitely list dependent, like you say. I just think this is a very cool defender. Fortunately, I think you won't see it very much in teams because I think if you're taking CSM, there are some clear power spikes in teams that I think Nightmare Hunt doesn't really reach that level. I think if you're taking CSM in teams, I think you take kind of Trae's veterans, kind of a well-rounded list that's kind of get a 10 plus into everything. I think you might take Soul Forged, kind of heavy guns with an open board as a defender. A brutal list with board choice. I think you take Fellhammer to attack shoot matchups and just 20-0 things like Guard and Tau. I think you take Renegade Raiders, another great all-rounder, or Creations of Bile, great all-rounder that can really hammer some good matchups. I don't think Nightmare Hunt probably makes the cut in teams. I think the one exception is you could do something really cool where you have a composition, especially in an 8s, where you've got Nightmare Hunt and you've got Plague Legion. You can use them as kind of paired attackers to hit a defender that might be really good at killing stuff, but has a hard time with bad leadership, hard time scoring. I think Knights, are a good example of that. Those armies, both Chaos Knights and Imperial Knights are very dependent on their armatures or war dogs out of OC7. Those hate having to take extra battleshock tests, so I think if you can attack that with like Plague Legion plus Nightmare Hunt, you can really blunt that, even if they get board choice. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting army and teams, and I'm really glad, Lane and Phil, you all brought up the teams thing. On MHM, Trae and I's team, we're all about teams. I know you all have done teams content, so really cool to kind of get to explore that angle with Nightmare Hunt.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's just one thing, it's very meta dependent. Do you feel like this is just a tool that's like, we know everybody and their mother is going to bring, Victrix Guard, 18 of them, right? Like, I think it's something you can consider. I agree. There's so many good choices in CSM that it probably doesn't make the cut, but it could. And I feel like that's where I would look at this as more of a viable option to see it come up than in singles. I think we're going to see even fewer people play it in singles than we see play it in teams.
Sure. Also, I think this is actually weirdly good into Necrons if the warrior bricks start becoming a thing again, which they kind of are. Because the big thing for people to understand is Necron reanimation happens after battleshock tests. So basically, Necrons are almost always going to be below starting strength very easily, like a big warrior brick. Taking leadership at -2, that's a huge issue for holding primary. I think like those kind of like 2x20 warrior brick lists, which you see pretty often in teams, I think those actually have a huge issue with Nightmare Hunt. That's kind of can do exactly what Phil was talking about. I think Nightmare Hunt can really put some pain on those lists. I know they've got a character to remove Battleshock once per game, but those happen after Battleshock or after primary scored. So I think Nightmare Hunt has a really, really good matchup into warriors between the Warp Talon brick just detonating 20 warriors with the Lord and the Battleshock shenanigans. There's definitely metas. Or I think, for example, Green Tide too, I think often. Even though the resurrection with I think a Pain Boy happens before Battleshock, it's still easy to kill enough of them that they have to take a Battleshock test even with the resurrection, then they're OC0 instead of OC, whatever they are, a lot. So yeah, definitely very meta dependent. Keep an eye out. We'll see what happens.
Awesome. Trae, any final thoughts?
I'm excited to play this detachment, actually,
Let's
dude.
go, y'all.
Like, there's just actual play in here, and that's what I'm kind of surprised about, is that you can actually make this work in a way. And that's just big. And I think, however, Tyranids will be in auto loss. So all Tyranids players, stay away from me, please. Do not touch me with your synapse or your 3 battleshock tests.
So
I will not appreciate it.
Okay, don't want to get off topic. I actually think Tyranids are totally fine because they have a lot of guys that die to Raptor melee, like little Griblies and little characters. And their leadership is actually kind of cruddy across the board. It's normally like an 8 or a 9 or something. So even with -2 on 3d6, they're still actually failing if you can stack those negs, which Nightmare Hunt can stack some negs on Battleshocks. Trae, I'd love to see you play that matchup or play that matchup myself sometime because I don't think that's a bad matchup at all. I think that's totally fine and winnable. Again, if you have that CSM experience, CSM skill, Tyranids might be light work for Nightmare Hunt. We'll find out.
We'll have to get Frankie on the channel on another live stream so he could play Trae and we can see how that turns out. But guys, we really appreciate y'all taking the time. If y'all haven't seen Mike P, he has a blog that he runs. It is the premier location for anything Chaos Space Marine related. It is the Warphammer blog. It's linked in the YouTube channel. We also have it in the Discord. You can also hit him up on the Mastercraft Discord. He loves talking about CSM. Same with Trae. He is coming off 2 back-to-back GT wins.
Let's go,
correct?
Trae.
Well, thank you.
Yep.
Back to back, baby.
Yeah, and as we talk about Denver and the the Colorado area is the premier area for 40K. We are blessed with all these fantastic players, fantastic people. I am very proud to be a part of this community, and Mike and Trae are just great examples of that. So thank you so much, guys. We really appreciate you coming on.
Nothing but love for Mastercrafted.
course.
Thanks for having us on, guys.
I'm glad my mom could let me make it.
Yeah, I know we have definitely gone over the time that your mom allowed, so we'll get this wrapped up so you can go have your snack for the afternoon and take your little nap. But thank you everybody for watching. Please,
4 minutes.
Ma the meatloaf. Thank you everybody for tuning in. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Join the Discord if you haven't already. And last but not least, do not forget that victory isn't given; it is forged, and it's forged right here on Mastercrafted. We'll see you all next time.
All right, bye, all.